And the title of our TOK presentation today is How is Beauty Measured?
So, using math as an area of knowledge, we can determine if beauty can be physically measured. Leonardo da Vinci presumed that the human body was a physical, asymmetrical structure. And with his theory of the Vitruvian Man, it can reflect the divine proportion, which many of us may know it as the golden ratio. Also, similarly to Da Vinci, Piero della Francesa's art was known for being geometrically pleasing. And this can help, this is because it was based on the golden ratio, and this can help the human eye determine if something is aesthetically pleasing. So, as a personal example, I did my math exploration on an investigation on the golden ratio in the human body. And this was to investigate the certainty of this ratio on real people, which were my classmates. And as we can see it from the results, none of them have the golden ratio, but some of them are really close to this divine proportion. But if we base our reasoning only on this ratio, we can deduce that none of these people are considered as beautiful because none of them have this characteristic. And using as a real life example are the TV show America's Next Top Model. And despite that none of these models have the golden ratio in their faces, there's always a winner at the end of the show that has a very successful modeling career. So even though quantitative data is used for the model's participation in the show, for example their weight or their height, what makes a model unique and stand out is their imperfections. So we can see that in the modeling industry, they don't focus so much on meeting the correct proportions, but rather on their virtues and their flaws to make a model unique. So as I was saying before, the theory of the divine proportion has asymmetrical body. So these are characteristics that makes models unique. For example, a teeth gap, an albino black woman, and so that's considered as beautiful in the model industry. But so are these measurements necessary to be considered beautiful? These are examples of a symmetrical face. So based on the theory, this is considered as beautiful, but do you actually think that these people look better than the original person? That remains on your own judgment, but to me they actually look animated and natural and a little bit unreal. So our face is a canvas for our emotions, and a welcoming smile, it can be considered as more beautiful than a smile than a frown with an expression showing contempt or anger, because it's closer to meet the measurements of the golden ratio. And this in the model industry, well, beauty is an essential characteristic, and very few models, or maybe even none of them, have the golden ratio in their faces. But can we say that their beauty could be measured by their success? For example, Tyra Banks with America's Next Top Model, or Heidi Klum with Project Runway. So the golden ratio was actually made for art and architecture, but the Mark Hart beauty mask was based on the golden ratio in their faces. So it is a way to measure physical beauty, but we're not considering the mind and the soul. So we could criticize this approach of being a little bit reductionist. So we can ask ourselves, can we trust these measurements, and how reliable are they? And who imposed them in our society? Because maybe the right proportions may imply a different shape and color, but It is what brings out the differences in every race, and it can help us understand the cultural variations in a competition with different ethnicities. So to fully understand our question, we need to think about these questions. And especially in how is beauty perceived? How do we perceive beauty to be able to measure it?
So in order to really understand how we perceive beauty, we have to look into society and culture. And a knowledge issue that arises from this topic would be, to what extent does our environment affect our perception of beauty? So basically, our environment varies from cultures to cultures. Each one consists of different beliefs, principles, and traditions that unconsciously influence our ways of thinking. So each culture has specific norms that must be followed, and these are unconsciously as well creating a unique concept of what beauty really is. It is whether it is physical, spiritual, or an inner way of beauty. So as an example for culture, we need to look into religion. Religion, in the case of religion, each culture has to follow a religion that develops a religion that is taught basically by our parents. This religion develops our judgments as we mature. For example, in the Middle East, Muslim religion is very strict on women. These women are very, in a way, they live in an oppressed lifestyle where they're expected to cover their whole bodies. You can only see their eyes, and this is because their religion is very strict on the appreciation and values that women have. Also, as knowers, we need to be aware that in this part of the world, women are considered to be inferior to men. So, being considered as inferior, they cannot be exposed to any other one than the ones they haven't been engaged to by their families. So, if these women can only show their eyes, what do these people consider as beautiful? Perhaps the fact that each one of them is a mystery to men. It makes them so intriguing and thereby beautiful. However, they are valued for their commitment to beliefs and their respect to men and their families. This is what they perceive as beauty. So how can this be measured? Another example is in the Asian part of the continent of the world, in Burma. There's this minority group that Korean women, as you can see in the picture, wear a metallic necklace of rings that since a young age they start wearing it and making their necks longer and longer. In their culture, this is seen as beautiful. The longer the neck, the more unique the woman is and the more appreciated she is. But being in a Western culture as ours, we would see this as abnormal. I wouldn't like my neck to be very long, and I don't think men would really be attracted to it. Also, moving on to the South America, more westernized culture, we see how in Brazil, the country is a very vibrant and very moving and very beautiful country in a different manner. And their culture has this tradition of these carnival events where women wear very little amounts of clothing and a lot of feathers that are very appealing and attract attention. And during these events, they dance in parades and enter beauty contests where the carnival's queen is selected. In order to select the carnival's queen, they're judged by their appearance and their abilities to dance. So as you can see in these three different examples, the idea of what beauty is very different. This is because basically the Western and the Eastern part of the world have very different cultures. The Eastern side of the world is more collectivist. Thereby, this means that they support each other and they have different priorities and principles, very different ways of thinking than the Western. Westerns are more individualists. they're forced to move by themselves, and therefore they're affected at an emotional level than in collectivist cultures. So after all, culture is part of who we are. It defines our perception of what beauty is to the eye of the beholder. Each person develops a personal judgment based on the past experiences or what they have learned as they have grown up in their culture. These experiences create morals, and thereby each time we are developing a personal judgment. So that's why beauty may vary between the eyes of the beholders. For example, for Amanda, she may have a different concept of what beauty is than mine. As well as the examples I gave you, women in Brazil are more appreciated for their body shape, whereas in Muslim cultures, they're valued for their respect to their religion, their families, and their spouse. So also, the different and unusual customs are considered to be beautiful in other parts of the world, like in the Kayan tribe. So, from this being said, this statement arises in a knowledge issue, that is it possible to measure beauty when there are so many different outlooks of it? Yet, through the years, time has passed, of course, greatly affecting our perception between cultures. Due to the advances in technology and the world becoming smaller due to globalization, people are able to see different aspects and take into account what other cultures think and see and consider as beautiful, and other factors and perspectives. This tends to have a more since countries are more interactive, the sharing of ideas and opinions is much faster due to the internet, media that Amanda will look into more depth later. And this creates a cross-cultural ideologies. This generally leads to the loss of culture and identity. People are becoming more focused on the Western side of the world that have a very different way of perceiving beauty, how to look, different moralities that other people may apply to their own, and maybe cause them to disobey or apply these new ways to their own culture. Based into our example of America's Next Top Model, these women, the contestants, are judged by these people. All these people come from different places. One is a magazine editorial, and then Tyra Banks is a model herself. Nigel Barker is a photographer, and then there's always an invited guest that's a model or as well, part of a fashion magazine. So the contestants have a lot of pressure on themselves. This is why when looking at the environment, we don't only have to focus on culture, but instead society. So society has a very specific standard and expectations of what we need to follow or look at in order to be beautiful. This is why the pressure the models are imposed to affects them a lot. It's like at a psychological level. As you can see, these girls enter as a regular girl, but then the pressure and the expectations and standards that need to be followed really affect them not only physically, but at a cognitive level. As you can see, these girls are transformed from what they were to a more beautiful aspect. These girls, however, don't have a say of what is being done to their changes. The judges just dispose. They just dispose what is going to be done, and therefore the emotions are very affected. So, does this mean that beauty is measured based on what attracts the eye? What about personality? What attracts the heart? Isn't that supposed to be beautiful as well? Or could it be used as a tool for measuring beauty? As I said, these girls are expected to follow standards and expectations. And they start to see themselves. They start to change their perspective of what beauty really is. They have to have makeup all the time. They have to look certain ways and dress certain ways.
So here comes media. So we know that this fashion show is a reality show. Girls are competing to really fit the standards of society. So like Andrea said before, we are westernized, and every country that has available TV, iPads, iPhones, and all those technologies that you are blessed to have, you're influenced and you're having the generous side of these TV magazines, and everyone telling you, you have to be skinny, you have to be tall, you have to be beautiful, and you have to buy those products in order to be beautiful. So here comes the interconnection and globalization. Nobody is unique. Your individuality is lost. As you can see, these girls are thin, they're tall, and they're similar, right? They're beautiful. Why they're beautiful? Because you think they're beautiful. Because since young you have been exposed to media, persuasive language, and many other factors that has influenced the way you think. So here comes another knowledge issue that you have to take into account us as knowers. Who is behind media and how media is manipulating our perception of how we measure beauty? Yeah, they go around America because they want to find the it girl, the American next top model, and they have to qualify the standards according to the fashion industry, which is an industry that only cares about selling, about manipulating their words, about manipulating their language in order to convince you they have to be skinny and tall in order to be like them. We can see that they have to pose to sell candies. We can see that they have to sell and convince the judges, yeah, I'm skinny, I'm tall, I'm going to sell your product because I only care about, my job and being famous. And also we see that this tyranny behind this industry, because these girls go through an emotional stress, and they feel pressure in order to adapt these parameters. They're manipulating us. And here comes the language. We can see, I remember when I saw this episode in the TV, and this girl was selling these shoes. She was trying to convince the judges, well, I'm going to convince the judges and I have to give my best in order to believe that I fit, the social parameters. And she had this beautiful picture taken up. And personally, I felt that, oh my God, those shoes are amazing. I want to buy them. I want to fit the social parameters of this society. And look at them. They're gorgeous, right? Don't you think they're gorgeous? Why? Because this program is telling you, you have to buy them. You have to be like me. I'm competing to be the next it girl of America. So yeah, language is very, very important because it creates stereotypes. They're beautiful, they're tall, they have those Gucci bags, they have those Louboutin shoes that you always want. And they are trying to convince the judges that they are able to manipulate us through their verbal language, through their body language, in order to convince us what is beauty according to the fashion industry. So here comes as a knower, I think. To what extent media has affected our emotions in relation to our physical appearance? Well, here's a very important part of the presentation. When you see this competition, you see yourself like, oh, these girls are so beautiful, and these girls are like presenting you an image that is unrealistic. They're using Photoshop. They're using a bunch of stylist groups. There's an assistant that's called Miss J. Alexander that taught them the body language, the art of manipulation. They taught them how this industry is manipulating us in order to sell and in order to abuse and exploit women. We see that a lot of girls, I remember in the show that she fainted because she was anorexic, because she was not eating, because she wanted to be skinny, because the fashion industry was saying the measurements to be skinny is size 0, and that's 20% below the average weight of the American woman and the whole world. And we feel bad. We feel psychological abused because of this competition, and the girls in the program also feels very with low self-esteem, and they fight with each other, and they're trying to say, I'm the it girl, I'm skinnier than you, I'm going to sell this product, and I'm going to win this competition. And
so we usually relate beauty with femininity, for example. But have you ever thought why there are no male contests? Why are not men valued by their acts of chivalry, physical beauty, or personal interest. So, do we ask ourselves, who determines this social standard that marks a difference on what makes a man beautiful or a woman beautiful? For example, these are characteristics that can be known for determining a beautiful man or woman. For example, a thin waist, pronounced hips, and a chest area. In men, broad shoulders and a muscular body. But there are also characteristics that are shared between them. For example, having shining hair, glowing skin, and a toned body. And these are characteristics that are associated with good health. So, through evolutionary psychology, we've learned that health was a crucial part for reproduction, and our physiological changes that we have through puberty, they can trigger a psychological instinct in us of reproduction in us humans that determines and marks the difference between a child and an adult, and shows that the person has reached a sexual maturity. So women not only value the physical appearance of men, but also they value their social status, their wealth, if they're future oriented, because they see it as a potential partner that could support their family. Also, men have this characteristic to seek kindness in women or other positive characteristics to determine if they have the maternal skills to raise their child. And there was a psychological study that where they asked women around the world if they preferred faces with more masculine traits rather than feminine traits in men. And in richer countries, they said these are an example of feminine traits and masculine traits in a man. So richer countries, women in richer countries preferred feminine traits rather than a more masculine face, and in poor countries they preferred more masculine traits rather than a feminine, because there are higher rates of death and diseases, and masculinity shows a genetic health, because it increases the chances of getting women pregnant or having a healthy child. So we can see this quote from the investigation that masculinity can signal genetic health, so putting them in an environment where health is more important might shape them a little bit more towards masculinity. So here we can see the relationship between psychology and the reasons behind which characteristics determine the opposite sex to be attractive. So both genders are visually stimulated by external beauty, but they're also seeking for an emotional connection that we can consider it as an inner beauty.
So moving on to one of our ways of knowing was, how does emotion affect our perception of someone's beauty? So quickly, basically you saw how Amanda said that media is constantly affecting how we feel about ourselves, and how these emotions change our perception of beauty. Emotion is very controlling over our ideologies and how we feel about ourselves. For example, in psychology, they come into there can be mental disorders such as depression, anxiety, eating disorders that Amanda also touched. So we have to consider, does emotion affect our perception of beauty, or does our perception of beauty affect our emotions?
So we have used human sciences and mathematics in order to try to measure beauty. And also we use different ways of knowing, reason, perception, and language and emotion. And we have to take into account that media has influenced us in order to really change our perception through language. And like Andrea said before, we're losing that cultural diversity, we're losing that beauty diversity, because there's a globalized beauty around the world. So we have to really think and reflect us as knowers, what is beauty, how it is measured, and who is deciding for us how to measure beauty? If it's really, is it going to make you happy to be skinny? If it's going to make you attractive, if you have the perfect it girl American Next Top model look? And here comes the final question. Truly measured? Thank you very much.